Hey friends, Damian Mason coming to you from a very waterlogged Indiana field. In fact, it's one of my fields. So I'm out here because last week we talked about crop insurance and you guys shared the video around with your non-agricultural friends. This week we're going to talk about supply, demand, and what the weather is doing to the agricultural industry. You know, I'm not a markets expert, but I do know a little bit about farming because obviously I have an agricultural economics degree and I was raised on a farm and I own this farm. This ground is really, really wet, and even if we don't get a drop of rain for the next 4 days, we're still a long way from planting, and the problem is much of the Corn Belt is this way. In fact, Pro Farmer just released this. As of May 29th, 39 million acres were unplanted that had intended to be in corn. What's that mean, dear consumer? We plant about 90 to 92 million acres of corn in this country in this day and age. There were 92 to 93 million acres that were intended to go into corn, and right now we're only about 50 to 60% of that done. What's this mean for you? Are you going to have higher food prices? It's way too early to tell. Why? Because we could dry off, get the right weather, and the corn could go in the ground while it's going in very late. If we have a fantastic July and August, it can actually make up for that lost time. A friend of mine planted all of his crops June 4th through the 8th. 2 seasons ago and achieved near record yields. The other part of the equation is what's going to happen on the demand side. Generally, demand stays about the same, but if you know anything, and I'm sorry about the crumpled paper, but I am out in the field after all, it all comes down to demand and supply, supply and demand. You've probably learned that, you've probably heard that. Demand stays roughly the same because we eat about the same amount and we feed to livestock about the same amount. But then there's ethanol, which consumes about 35 to 40% of our corn crop. Is corn going to get pricey to where then you can't justify using it to make fuel? That's one consideration. Will some of the people feeding livestock decide to feed a different product? Maybe grab some wheat or some other stuff that's in more supply. Also, there's what we call carryover, meaning last year's supply of corn. We still have that, and we got to chew through some of that. The honest to goodness truth is this might be positive for corn prices because corn prices were fairly depressed until this weather event. So now in the last few weeks, we've seen a bit of a rally. I'm not a grain trading expert. Frankly, if I sat and looked at my computer all day and get excited about a 3-cent move in corn, I'd take my 9mm out in this very field and end it all because it's just not going to work for my personality. But I did want to cover all this. Remember, supply and demand are your 2 key factors, but it actually can change both supply and demand even this late in the game. So stay tuned. I'm Damian Mason coming to you from a very wet Indiana field that was supposed to be planted to corn by now.